The evening rush at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago was at its peak, with announcements echoing through crowded terminals and passengers hurrying toward their gates. Mark Reynolds stood firmly at gate C-17, his posture straight, his expression focused. As a senior airline supervisor, he believed that rules were the backbone of order, especially in an environment where a few minutes could disrupt an entire schedule. He had already dealt with 2 delayed flights, frustrated passengers, and a staff shortage. To him, there was no room for exceptions tonight. As the final boarding call was announced for Flight 482 to New York, the line began to thin. Mark checked his watch and signaled to the gate agent to prepare for closing. Just as the last few passengers stepped through, a woman approached at a steady pace. She wasn't running or out of breath like most late arrivals. Instead, she carried herself with calm confidence, her eyes scanning the gate before resting on Mark. "Excuse me," she said politely. Handing over her ticket, "I believe I'm just in time." Mark glanced at the boarding pass and then at the clock. "Boarding is closed, ma'am," he replied firmly. "You'll need to rebook for the next flight." The woman, Elena, didn't react with panic or anger. "There must be some flexibility," she said calmly. "The aircraft is still at the gate." Mark shook his head, his tone unwavering. "Policy is clear once the gate is closed. No further passengers can board." A few nearby travelers slowed down. Sensing tension, Elena held his gaze as if measuring something beyond his words. "I understand policies," she said, her voice still composed, "but sometimes judgment matters more." Mark felt a flicker of irritation. He had heard every excuse before: missed connections, traffic emergencies. "I'm sorry, but the answer is no," he replied more sharply this time. "Please step aside so we can complete the process." For a brief moment, silence lingered between them. Elena studied him, not with anger, but with quiet curiosity. Then she nodded slightly, stepping back without protest. The gate door closed moments later with a final click, sealing the decision as the crowd dispersed. Whispers floated in the air about the calm woman who didn't argue. Mark dismissed it quickly, returning to his duties. But as Elena walked away through the terminal, her composed expression remained unchanged, almost as if the situation had revealed exactly what she needed to see. The next morning, the corporate headquarters in downtown Chicago carried a very different energy from the chaos of the airport. Mark Reynolds walked into the sleek glass building, his mind racing with questions. The unexpected call from upper management had been brief and formal, offering no explanation, only that his presence was required immediately. He adjusted his tie as he stepped into the elevator, a subtle uneasy settling in his chest. When he entered the executive conference room, the atmosphere felt heavy and unusually quiet. Senior leaders sat around a long, polished table, their expressions composed yet unreadable. At the far end of the room stood a familiar figure. Mark froze mid-step as recognition hit him. It was the same woman from the gate, Elena, but now she carried an unmistakable authority. Her posture confident, her presence commanding the entire room without effort. "Mr. Reynolds, please have a seat," she said calmly. Mark obeyed, his earlier confidence replaced with uncertainty. He quickly realized that this was no ordinary meeting. Elena stepped forward, her gaze steady but not harsh. "Let me introduce myself properly," she began. "I am Elena Carter, owner of this airline." A wave of shock moved silently across the room, though Mark felt it most intensely. His mind replayed the previous evening. The refusal, his tone, the finality of his decision. He braced himself for what seemed inevitable. "I observed your actions yesterday." Elena continued. "You followed protocol exactly as written. That kind of discipline is rare and valuable." Her words caught him off guard, but before he could feel relief, she added, however, "Leadership is not defined by rules alone." The room remained silent as she walked slowly along the table. "You had an opportunity to exercise judgment, to understand the situation beyond a policy. Instead, you chose rigidity over awareness." Her voice wasn't angry, it was measured, deliberate. Mark lowered his eyes slightly. "Absorbing every word, I'm not here to punish you," Elena said after a pause. "I'm here to challenge you." She stopped and looked directly at him. "From today, you will undergo leadership reassignment training. You will learn to balance structure with empathy, authority with understanding." Mark looked up, surprised. "You're giving me another chance?" he asked quietly. Elena nodded once. "Because potential is more valuable than perfection." As the meeting ended, Mark stepped out of the room, a changed man. The fear he had carried in was replaced by something deeper: humility. For the first time,
He understood that true leadership wasn't about enforcing rules.
without question, but about knowing when to look beyond them.